start recording the session. Roanhorse Consulting is an Indigenous woman-led think tank. Roanhorse Consulting works with unheralded communities, businesses, organizations, and individuals to achieve and aspire their self-determination through forging communities of practice, strengthening Indigenous evaluation methods, creating equity through entrepreneurship, and encouraging economic empowerment from within. Roanhorse Consulting co-designs wealth and power building efforts that directly invest in our leaders, support meaningful data collection informed by Indigenous research approaches, and helps build thoughtful community-led projects that enforce values that put people at the center. Vanessa is a 2020 Conscious Company Media's World-Changing Woman in Sustainable Business awardee, and she's a 2020 Boston Impact Initiative Fund Building Cohort Fellow. She is a retired member of the Albuquerque Living Cities Leadership Table, and she is a Startup Champions Network member. She sits on the boards of Native Community Capital, Zebras Unite, and the New Mexico Association of Grantmakers. She is one of 8 co-founders of Native Women Lead, an organization dedicated to growing Native women into positions of leadership and business. And she is a mom of 1 who may be a streaker later. No, just kidding. Living with her family in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Vanessa is a citizen of the Navajo Nation. Can we please welcome Vanessa? Yay. Oh, I have you guys all muted. All right, I'm gonna hand over the virtual mic, Vanessa. I'm muting myself. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you. It's always funny to hear yourself being spoken about. So I appreciate it, April, and I appreciate you wanting to host these conversations. I will say one of the things that I'm so constantly amazed by, and I don't think I'll ever stop being amazed by, is the flexibility, the agility, the innovative, and honestly risk-taking that our Indigenous women are willing to do. Like, I am constantly amazed, and I don't know if I'll ever stop being amazed. And so when April mentioned that she started this series and why she started this series and how she's rethinking her own business model within her work, that takes courage. It takes courage not to sit, like, it takes courage, but it also, you know, we ought to give ourselves time for some of that healing to be able to stop and look around and say, I can sit here and be sad, which I did the other night, by the way. I felt sorry for myself and stayed up really late watching terrible TV. And we have to have those moments to be able to wake up the next day and get our minds right, to wake up and put that foot forward with intention with every step to say, here's who I want to be. And even when we can't achieve it, we wake up the next day and try again. And so I just want to say, yeah, April, I'm grateful for what you're building. So it's wonderful to be here. As April mentioned, I live here in Albuquerque with my husband and my 6-year-old son, who is taking a bath right now, which is where, for anyone who missed it earlier, I'm hopeful he doesn't get out of his bath and just run around naked, but he might. So sorry. So anyways, okay. So thank you. And I just wanted to kind of share my story about money because that really spoke to me as well when April and I were catching up. And I'm a huge fan of Dr. Tracy Morris, and I am disappointed she's not here, but I'm also in great respect for people who just have to put boundaries up at this time, as well as like say that they can't do stuff. And I think we tend to, as Indigenous women particularly, just say yes, because we want to help, we want to support. So for me, my first memory around money is when I was probably at my son's age, maybe a little bit younger. And we were living here in Albuquerque at the time. We had just moved off the Navajo Nation to come up here so my mom could pursue her bachelor's degree at UNM. She's a single mom, 2 kids, twins, my sister and I. And I remember going to McDonald's and her ordering us cheeseburgers, not like Happy Meals, just cheeseburgers, 1 thing of French fries, and she didn't have any food. And then watching her and being too afraid to ask, but that was the first time I knew money was about sacrifice. For me, that's my first like engagement with money, was there wasn't enough and people had to sacrifice to have it. And that sacrifice wasn't like a good sacrifice. It was because there wasn't enough, someone else had to sacrifice it for others. And that really stuck with me. And then the second time was when I went to boarding school on the East Coast for high school, and really finding out how damn poor we were. Like, I knew we weren't rich. I knew we weren't wealthy people, but I grew up mostly on the reservation, and I had family everywhere in walking distance. I had a million cousins. We were a wild pack of animals running the roads in the mountains. And, but we always had food. We always had safety. We were loved. And all of my aunts and uncles and grandparents were there for us. Like, I never felt scared or alone. And then going to boarding school and seeing the kind of wealth that people had was the first time I was like, damn, we are poor. We are, compared to what this is. And then on the other side, I also realized how rich we were, because I never questioned where I came from. I never had to hold on to other people's cultures or beliefs, because I had my own. I also realized how rich we were in the sense of community safety nets, of having a tapestry of strong Navajo women who held our families together, and also how no one ever really went hungry in my family, because if someone was hungry, we came together. So all of that took many years for me to understand how money meant, what money meant for me, and what could I do with it. When I moved back to here in Albuquerque, because I pretty much lived in cities and was working overseas and doing everything I could to just not lose my Navajo-ness, but just like live like what I thought the world wanted me to be. And so when my husband and I had our first and only kid, I don't think I could handle more. So all of you with multiple children at home, so much respect for you right now, especially if they're under the age of 10. I'm looking at my friend Joni right now, who has a wonderful set of little girls. But man, so we moved back here and I started Roanhorse Consulting, not with really trying to start a company. I couldn't find a job. I was working in Chicago for 15 years, doing some really cool stuff, but my resume, my background, all of that to say is I didn't really fit the right sort of mold on paper. The other thing is I did not graduate college. A lot of people don't know that about me, but I am a terrible student. I love to learn, but I suck at being a student. I don't like to be told what to do. So college wasn't for me. I ended up just kind of, finding my way. So on paper, I didn't have that certification. And so on my return, I couldn't find work, and I ended up starting a company, which is now Roanhorse Consulting. And that journey taught me in a really real, visceral way, the vulnerabilities of not having a strong job, but mostly the vulnerabilities in our financial systems, which are fundamentally intentionally broken. For people of color and for Indigenous people, we've been actively pushed out. In some cases, it's part of it's part of the plan of genocide for us. Do not allow Native people into these financial systems, which is why we don't see enough of us coming out of school with becoming economic development scientists, becoming financial wealth managers. We don't see enough of our community members doing that. And part of it is because money has been an active tool to hurt us from the very beginning. Money has been wielded to harm. And so I understand why we don't feel comfortable and confident talking about money. I understand why we come from a scarcity. Many of us have come from scarcity mentalities. Is when one, we grew up in it. Two, it's a constant drumbeat being told to us that your government, that your tribes and your casinos can cover you, that you guys are always asking for a handout, and that we are, all of the stigmatizations. How could we not see money in a fearful way? The narrative of money has just completely overshadowed the reality that narrative of money, which is, what is money? It's a tool. Why do we have it? It's just a means to an end. But more importantly, what is wealth? Because I could care less about money at the end of the day. Money, you know, it's helpful to be able to go and put gas in my car. However, the stuff that matters the most is the fact that we as a country and a people don't recognize that wealth is family, health, community, food, safety. That's wealth. And so money is just a small part of it. And I think as a Native people, we are rich in wealth. We are deeply rich in wealth. And if we could get into formation around how we can actually come together to be able to play in the colonized version of money and then retake it for ourselves, I think we should be at the forefront, particularly under COVID-19. We should be the lead birds right now defining the new economy of tomorrow because of what's happened today. So I'll stop blabbing, but that's stuff that I think a lot about.
He's a part of, there's actually resources that have become available because of COVID-19 for businesses, nonprofits. I'm not sure. It seems like it changes day by day. So I'm going to hand it off to you again, Vanessa. Thank you. And thank you everyone for your shares.
Okay, thank you. So a couple things is so when this kind of really hit a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more than 3 weeks, we decided to mobilize on our side because the amount of information that wasn't coming out at the time, but also what we were seeing like right away, you know, Native Women Lead, which is another organization I get to work with, we had to cancel our big 2 retreats that we're having this year. Like we made that decision, God, right in early March, actually. It was kind of just coming back and sort of looking around and saying, this is not, we weren't scared, but we were at the time thinking, we don't know what people need and let's not distract from what they need to take care of. But then as we did that, some of our co-founders, our friends and partners started sharing contracts dropping off left and right. People started sharing how suddenly they were worried around being able to make product. And then Gathering of Nations sent a note to us because we had been hoping to do something with them. And we found out they were canceled. And we got a flood of emails from small Native-owned businesses who were like, if GON goes down, then SWIA goes down, we are screwed. Like this is our annual, this is over like 60-70% of our income is going to be these kinds of events. The powwow circuit went down. So all that to say is like, we immediately, and I know I immediately took a deep breath and said, what do we do? So we convened, at least in the Southwest region, all of the entrepreneur support organizations that we could think of, that we knew of, that were working with Native entrepreneurs and Native businesses. And so we kind of informally started this group. We don't have a name yet. There's no logo, but we've been meeting every Friday. And part of that initial effort was to start to say, well, let's start tracking everything. Let's start tracking and mapping what is being shared. So I'm going to give this Facebook page, which I think you have to be invited. And the only reason why it's invitation only is because of the amount of hackers that we're seeing coming in to this space and kind of trying to disrupt information. It's now particularly focused. So I just put the Facebook group in there, but in that group, there are over 120 members across the country. And what it is Native leaders, people, businesses are sharing resources. And then what we're doing is taking those resources and we're putting it into this Word document or this Google Sheets document, which I'm copying right now. And this Google Sheets document is being populated by a number of people. These resources specifically are focused on just what we're seeing in terms of fund development for small businesses, grants, whatever. But it's also around information, one-on-ones, people hosting webinars. All of it is just our initial attempt to sort of try to manage the experience of drinking out of a fire hose, which in itself is just getting worse and worse with, I mean, I don't know how much of you are on Zoom fatigue, information fatigue. It's contributing to this like cycling of fear right now. But our intention with this is to sort of say like, look, we know if we don't care, if we as Native people don't just take a hold of this narrative ourselves, take a hold of the information we care about, no one else is going to. We know our federal government isn't going to. Sadly, we know our states are going to try to be supportive, but they're not going to put us first. And so it's our job to have to do this. So those resources are there for anyone to access, to use, to be a part of. The other thing is Roanhorse Consulting and Native Women Lead are working with OWISTA, Indian Collective, Audubon, and then our partners locally, New Mexico Community Capital, Change Labs, Native Community Capital, to basically start to put together a list of webinar series. And it's going to be focused on just Indian, Native American, Indigenous businesses and what's out there. And so the purpose of it is to sort of align, again, all these national organizations. And what's insane is that we should have all been working together sooner. But I think the challenge has always been that we just have all been, we're all under capacity, overworked. And the truth of it is, this one thing that's happening with COVID-19 is it's forcing us all to be better collaborators, better relatives, better partners. And so that series should be coming out. We have our first webinar next week. So if you go to Indian Collective, if you follow them, or even OWISTA or Audubon, there should be a link. And the idea is through our partnership, we're actually mapping the resources based on these categories. If you're an unregistered business owner / working in the informal economy, what's out there for you? If you are a small business owner, but you're really a solopreneur, meaning you're the only person who's really managing your business, you don't have employees, what's out there for you? If you're someone who has a company with 5 employees or less, and as you can imagine, we go, and as we get to anyone who's got 250 to 500 or more than 500 employees, we're just kind of like, yeah, go talk to NCAID. Yeah, go talk to SBA, because they're going to figure it out. They have the resources. They're going to be able to make sense of it. Our interest is really going to be on that small micro business, solopreneur, folks working in the informal economy who don't have maybe registered businesses. Like, that's really who I'm most worried about. Because there's two types of money that people need. They need money to pay their mortgage, rent, and utilities, put food on their tables, make sure there's gas in their cars. And then for some of our community members, they don't have access to clean water. They don't have access to actually food. Our elders are going to the grocery stores and there's no food there. So we recognize there's these like massive emergent money needs. And Native Women Lead is working actually to launch an emergency fund for grants. And hopefully we'll be able to get that going in the next couple of weeks. It'll be $25,000 up to $500. And then we will also be announcing soon a loan product for small businesses next week. And so with all of that, you know, we're just one of many partners who are trying to address that. And I also want to give a shout out to Steph Poston, just an FYI, she's a co-founder as well of Native Women Lead and is working really hard right now so that we can actually get this communications plan together, as well as some infographics to share with our community, because we all came together and said, we need to ask our people, what do you need? And just to give you a heads up, oh my God, my stats are all messed up. Mostly the key things folks need is with the stuff I shared, but also they needed access just to capital that didn't have any barriers. And so we are having national conversations, not only with philanthropy, but banks, traditional banks who have actually pushed us out of the system, government leaders, not like tribal government, but government leaders. We want to be able to talk to our tribal government, but just saying, like, how do we coordinate these resources and create the right mechanisms so that you can receive the money? But more importantly, those frontline grassroots organizations, how do they get that? So all that to say is, like, there is more than enough resources out there about COVID-19, but how do we curate the resources for Native people? Because people are making these resources, but they're not looking at the small business, like the truly small business. Like, I am a small business owner, you know, like, I am not, like, to lump small businesses with people who have 50 employees to 500 is kind of hilarious, because we're not having the same lived experiences. So our hope is to be able to pull these resources together, really focus on that community, because in the United States, while Native Americans may be launching businesses faster than other community members, most of our businesses are solopreneurs or single sole proprietor businesses, which means we're not generating deep wealth. What we're generating is income and salary for ourselves, but we're not creating deeper wealth, meaning creating job opportunities and reinvesting those dollars right back into where we live. And so how do we get there? Part of it is because we don't have access to capital. Part of it is because of where we live. And so our hope is to really use this time with COVID-19, with people working together for the first time in a really great way, in a loving, transparent way that Native people come together, but also using that collective voice and power to say enough is enough, and this is how we want it and why we want it this way. So those resources I shared, they're specifically geared to COVID-19. We're not the only ones doing this, so I encourage you to take a look, but we are trying to figure out how do we sort from this information specific small business Native American issues. Because again, if we don't do it, no one else will.